It's time for a strange trip into the unknown with some wild new cards. Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and the past few weeks have been packed. Among other places, I was at MagicCon Barcelona and then took the trip to Indianapolis for GenCon and Magic's 30th anniversary. One event I ran at both of them was the next iteration of my Unknown event. If you've been following the past couple of these, you'll know that these are events where there are some wacky rules. This time around, players got booster packs of Commander Masters and the Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth, to build a 60-card Commander sealed deck out of. But the wrinkle? You were going to play one-on-one Commander. So it's a little bit of something for Commander players and a little bit of something for limited players. The games were one-game matches and a few special rules were in effect. First of all, you could use any two monocolored commanders as though they had partner. This is just like Commander Masters Limited, but that was true for all legends across both sets. I loved seeing some of the real wild and hilarious combinations players came up with. Second, players started with 30 life instead of 40. This helps just make sure the game didn't drag on too long. And finally, everybody still got a free mulligan. It's not multiplayer, but given one-game matches, it was definitely something I wanted to give people. Now, that's all fine and good, and the format was definitely a hit. People had a blast. But the spice everybody was waiting for? The playtest cards. I've done this kind of thing at the past 2 Unknown events, and there were new cards here. Players received 10 of 60 possible brand new playtest cards for this format, and today I'm going to tell you what they all were. They were designed both by me and also by our internal hole-filling team. Thanks so much to all the folks that sent me cards. Ready? Okay, keep an eye out as we go through. I'd love to hear which ones you'd like to be made into actual cards. Here we go. Let's kick it off with Taught by Sarah. This is part of a 5-card cycle of cards with the Commander enchantment ability. I've had this idea for a while, auras that you put on your commander and then stick around as your commander moves around. This is a good example to me of how these cards don't all strictly work, but for Unknown, they work well enough. Speaking of cycles, another cycle you can expect, Spell Commander. You see it here on Gather the Townsfolk, a play of course on Gather the Townsfolk. What if a spell could be your commander? Well, okay, you can kind of already do this with cards like Awaken the Blood Avatar being the backside of Exodus, but not quite as utility as these. I've always been a little wary of cards like this because they remove the identity of building around a permanent that sits on the battlefield, but they were a big hit. What do you think? Coming up next, we have Tax Hounds. One thing I thought could be fun to play with was counting your commander tax. This isn't space we really do in normal commander design, but here it's on the table. With this card, you make 1/1s equal to your total commander tax. It's pretty easy for this to make 4 1/1s or more in the long game. Every week on social media, somebody asks me when we're going to get the White Rhystic Study. So here you go, White Rhystic Study. It's exactly that for the people who haven't got enough of, do you pay the one? Fiorin Reformist helps answer a problem I knew the format would have. Monarch. Monarch is quite powerful in one-on-one. And while it was just 3 one-game matches, the more ways to help deal with the Monarch, the better. This card eliminates the monarchy and puts democracy in effect instead. The idea of Try My Deck Elemental was funny to me. What if you could demonstrate your commanders? The rest fell out of there. But keep in mind, regardless of if you do it much, the 4-mana 4/3 flyer is still worth playing. Often I give these playtest cards generous rates for limited, since you're going to only be able to play a few of them, and it's the one time you can put them in a deck without having to get the rules are okay from everybody else. This one still hits hard. Now here's an interesting one, Theophilos, Order Acolyte. First of all, for most of the legends here, I named them after obscure characters, so keep your eyes peeled for ones you recognize. I figured it'd be fun for people who know some of these. This character was a cellmate of Teo on Gobakon. But anyway, I wanted to try some monocolor incentives for people to build monocolored decks. What if you got a deck building reward for doing it? There's one of these in each color. They ended up being a little tricky to pull off because you're a bit at the mercy of your sealed pool as to if you open a lot of playables in your color, but it was very cool seeing the players that did manage to make these work. What do you think about something like this in normal Magic as incentive for monocolored decks? Form of the Stacks player was just a hilarious idea to me. A form of card like Form of the Dragon, but of a specific kind of Magic player. Each turn you make 1 classic Stacks piece at random. Perfect. I will note that it's not clear from the card, but this is supposed to be at random, which is why it tells you to pick one at random. So if you happen to get your hands on one of these, be sure to play it that way. One Does Not is a lockdown aura that begs the question, is there a way to complicatedly untap a creature? Well, not yet. Cast it on their creature to shut it down, or put it on yours to simply landwalk into victory. Taught by Narset is the blue member of this cycle. giving your commander just a little bit of extra protection with the ward and a prowess boost. Ring Out is the card so many commander players would love to have in their deck on turn 1. It's negate, but if your opponent has a turn 1 Sol Ring, you get to cast it for free from your library. This doesn't work in the Magic rules because you can't trigger like this from your library, but here it's fair game. I actually did see this counter a Sol Ring once on the weekend, so it's even effective in limited. Nice. Speaking of Sol Ring, in Sol Ring is another reference to the classic. It makes a non-land permanent a Sol Ring. Enchant your own thing to ramp or their creature to get it out of there. This is a card that, with slightly different words, is actually not too nuts for us to just make someday. Would you want it? For those who never want their games to end, I have a card for you. Clear the Mind. Shuffle in your graveyard and cantrip on a commander? I fear some poor soul's game in Barcelona is still going on. Tax Straw is the blue one of these. I generally tried to go for 1 cast of your commander being fine, 2 casts of your commander being great, and anything beyond being excellent. And this certainly fits the bill as a 4 mana draw 4 if you've cast your commander twice. Dock Breacher smashes 2 beloved by all cards together for 1 card that hates on them. Dockside Extortionist and Hull Breacher. What's this? I'm being told that these cards aren't beloved by all? Huh. Well, next card. Lorthos is the blue member of the Mono Eminence cycle and gives you a huge advantage, an extra card. On top of the extra card you get just by playing partners, that's a real powerhouse. Now, it does cost 8 mana to cast, but hey, blue wants you to play the long game anyway. Shedding Snake plays with the commander tax further by letting you reset yours entirely. Once again, not space we normally really play in, but it is certainly interesting in something like this, especially when your limited game might be going on for a while and your commander is getting pricey. Taught by Vito is the black member of this cycle and grants lifelink. My favorite commander I saw it played on, Heartless Hidetsugu. Wowza. Now that's a brutal combo, especially because you can't easily get rid of the aura. We've talked a lot about commander tax, but what about commander damage? Soul Drainer gets rid of all commander damage from a commander and zaps their commander in the process. Another bit of unusual design space here. Delve Too Deep ended multiple games I saw it cast. Turns out, killing their creature and getting a 7/7 yourself is pretty solid and easy to do as the games go along. Tax Sweeper is the black card that looks at your commander tax, putting an extra board sweeper into the format too. There's a lot of interest and caution here because maybe you want to play your commander, or maybe you want to hold it so that you don't kill your own big creatures with this card. Definitely a bit of tension. Ransack, the lab, is the black member of this cycle, giving you a card and stocking your graveyard over and over again. Who needs a creature commander when you can just find good cards from your deck? Auntie Flint, of course, of well-known Spiderwig Bogart fame, is the black Mono Eminence commander. Pumping your whole team's power for free is no joke if you can pull off the mono black deck. Taught by Bruce Tarl is the red one in this cycle, which grants double strike, but I really like Bruce Tarl, so when I made this card in theme with him, I also wanted to give you protection from Oxen. Take that, Pillarfield Ox. Hey, what power level is your deck? Well, my deck is about a 7. This card is so silly, but makes me cackle every time. I'd say this one got an equal mix of I don't get it and uncontrollable laughter. Mission accomplished? Tax Bolt lets you burn things equal to your commander tax, including directly to your opponent's face to maybe finish off the game. Triple Threat plays around with commander damage too, tripling your commander damage output. The place this definitely made the most decks was with 7 power commanders, killing in 1 hit. There's actually one 5-color commander later I definitely saw people combo this with. Lava, Axe, puts the game on a real clock. It's slow, but at 5, 7, and 9 mana, being able to deal 5 means you only need to squeak in 15 more damage elsewhere to take the game down. Who needs board presence when you can just burn their face? MZ? MZ? Well, anyway, it's the red Mono Eminence commander, and haste felt like an appropriate thing to hand out here. That said, even if you don't, a 4-mana creature that makes you 1/1s each turn is still pretty solid. Math is for blockers. Well, sometimes reading the name of the card just explains the card, you know? Cast it, turn sideways, and figure out the rest later. Taught by Surak is the green member of this cycle. Bigger and burlier, giving your commander haste is a huge boost, especially as the game goes longer. Your opponent always has to keep an eye on, and fear, your command zone with this hanging out in it. It's easy to make Taxkeeper a 2-mana 3/3, but it scales up to get bigger and bigger into the long game. I like that you can get it out early and just wait on it for it to grow if you need to. I'll take a 2-mana 7/7, thanks. Rampant, Growth, is probably busted. But in Limited, it's a little harder to break it and make it consistent, and losing one of your commanders is a much bigger deal. Sure, it's awesome on turn 2 and turn 3, but then essentially you've lost one of your commanders. You probably don't want to cast it much later on. That said, still pretty strong. The Dilu horse is, of course, a callback to riding the Dilu horse. This is the creature giving your commander +2/+2 and horsemanship forever. Ah, good old horsemanship. Maitre 3 has something I love, the idea of calling a list a menu. This is a great example of how this can work and make total sense on a playtest card, but completely breaks down on an actual Magic card where it would be a mess of words. Just part of why I love working on these. Mr. Wiggles, who, to be very clear, is the name of an actual established character in Magic lore, go look them up, gives you a land if you meet the Mono Eminence condition. This is especially important because it's not so impressive as a 3-mana 1/1 butterfly, but that extra land is pretty strong. I saw someone use this and Rampant Growth as their commanders. Nice. Watch out everybody, it's the Colossal Dreadmaw. Legendary. It lets you cast all your creatures like Colossal Dreadmaw. Could there be any card more fearsome or powerful? Okay, now this next mechanic is a doozy. Hadron, Naya Sunseeder, and the Rulebreaker ability. What if you could break color identity, but only in ways that the commander specifically said was okay? Keep in mind, you still can't include off-color basic lands in your deck. You need to use mana rocks and such to make it work. Would this break commander, or would this be okay on occasion? You let me know what you think. In Hadron's case, it just lets you splash your big creatures, and Hadron themselves gives you 1 mana off color to help you cast these expensive cards. Valko Endorian is a weird one of these in that it doesn't help you get mana to cast your cards, but hopefully in your deck full of artifacts, you'll have enough mana rocks to cast your off-color spells. Its weird enchantment and artifact flip-flopping is especially a strange twist. Callous Roka is a character with a small but fervent following who kind of mind switches with Jace, and that's just what this card does. When you play it, something else permanently becomes calloused, and it becomes something else. Of course, if it dies and you recast it, you can start legend ruling their stuff by giving them 2 copies of Calloused. Brutal. Slowbad is here. And you know what? He's actually just fine. I like the idea of this first line of text letting the sacrifice deck work in new ways, by letting you sacrifice different things. And then what does Slowbad do while he's just fine? Rebuild his good friend Bosch, of course. Margul, cousin to Yargul, is the perfect card when you just don't care what your creatures do. You just want them to be huge. It's especially good with tokens as a double anthem for them, but the most fun way to build this deck is probably getting rid of the downside text like Defender on your creatures. Arvad was a popular rule breaker, letting you fill your deck with off-color legends. Maybe you cast them, or maybe you cheat them into play. This is definitely capable of some wild openings, and a card you really don't want to hit you early on. It's Grogue! I've had this idea for Commander Suspend for a while. It's always frustrated me that you can't suspend out of the command zone, like on Ith, because some cards really want to do that, and a commander that slowly shows up felt flavorful. But here, I can write whatever I want on cards. Would you like to see Commander Suspend too? Let me know. Anyway, go Grogue! The idea of a legendary creature called Simic Value Engine was where I started here, and from there, the rest fell into place. If you're playing more lands, you get to draw cards. If you're drawing more cards, you get to play lands. Do you need a way to win the game? Nah. You've got value. Daxiver was another really popular rule breaker, being an Izzet spell commander that let you cheat and play spells of other colors. A highlight for me was watching Jimmy Wong cast a Kindred Dominance out of absolutely nowhere in his blue-red deck using this card. They definitely generated some wild stories. It's another equipment commander. No, that's not a statement, it's a card. We make so many different red-white equipment matters cards. What if you just got to build your own out of an array of thematic abilities? Well, that's what this card does. Awoken Nephilim was a huge hit. Finally, it lets you play any of the Guild Pact Nephilim as your commander. This popular fan request that I literally did a whole video on is realized here with this one card. I saw several different Nephilim chosen for this one, so it wasn't always the same one, and it was really cool to see this card get use. Granted, 4 colors is just strong in Commander Sealed, too. It's time for the eldest dragon, Highlander. Built like one of the classic Elder Dragons from Legends, this card lets you play all 5 colors and a commander that can kill with commander damage if you have enough mana. Rampage 2 is a nice little touch that throws back to the olden times of Legends, even if a lot of people had to ask what it did. One thing about these events is that it's nice when the mana fixing is good enough so you can play your playtest cards. So your mana rock lets you fix for exactly what you need. If you're playing something like 4-color Nephilim or Eldest Dragon Highlander, it helps smooth things out while giving you a mana rock to boot. Sneakily, it also avoids color identity rules for your Rulebreaker cards too, in case you want to use it to splash. Potatoes are so multifaceted. You can boil, mash, or stew them. But my favorite silly thing for me on this card is the mana cost. It costs 0 because it looks like a potato to me. Yep. That's what happens when you let me design weird magic cards. Toe Breaking Helmet can force an opponent's creature to kick it and break 2 of their toes. Ouch! Until then, it's just an extra equipment for your equipment deck. The name Sagrada Familiar was suggested to me by Hole Filling, and way too awesome to not use for an event that takes place in Barcelona, a city home to the famous Sagrada Familia. Like the building, this card reaches to the skies and has plenty of stained glass. Power Level Analyzer is top down the minigame of trying to figure out with somebody what power level deck you're each playing. And if you both chose the same number, congratulations, you did well, and of course have the default of a 7 with 7 counters. What number would you pick for this card? Okay, so I knew YouTuber Spice 8 Rack was going to be at this event, so how about a card called Spice Rack? To build this, I looked back at the Rack and Black Vise for inspiration. And what about a card that limited your opponent's number of commanders? And that's where this came from, with cycling just in case your opponent doesn't have 2 commanders. Mana Conference is another mana fixer that gives you just what you need. And usually your opponent will name a color you don't need, but with Rulebreaker, you never know if that might be usable. Command from the Shadows asks the question, what if your commanders were secret? This actually led to a bunch of real fun guessing moments. One of my favorite moments all event was when one player attacked with Geode Golem with their commander still a mystery. Their opponent thought about it and didn't want to trade, so they let it through. And then they flipped over to their commander, the Ur Dragon. Oops! Have you ever wanted 2 of the same commander? Anolk, Perfect Clone, lets you do that. Yes, Sakashima is similar, but this doesn't need you to be blue and also copies mana cost. The name, of course? Clone backwards. Original. How to solve every character ask ever with 1 card? Well, it's your favorite character. You pick the character, color, and keywords, and you get exactly what you've been asking for. Pick something canonical, or very not. The choice is yours. Mysterious Confluence gives you just the confluence you need. Well, maybe. For 5 mana at instant speed, you can get any of the modal confluences from Mystic to Riveteers and beyond. But no matter what, there's bound to be some modes there that are good for you. Now, that's all the cards you could open, but we're not quite done yet. There's also the prize cards. At the end of each unknown event, you are given a legendary prize card. It's a fun memento of the event, and maybe something to go build a Rule 0 commander deck around. Each event gets a different one. So in Barcelona, we started on day 1 with Barca, who does something unique. It lets you change your commander mid-game. One commander's tax getting too high, or you just want to swap it out, Barca is your card. On the other hand is Lona. Lona wants you to play cards that have been reprinted a bunch of times. So all your Lightning Bolts and Llanowar Elves, and yes, Colossal Dreadmaws, are a bit cheaper. Looking for reprints is a whole new commander deck to try and build. And then finally, at Gencon, we had Gen, Confider of Ages. For Magic's 30th birthday weekend, what better than a card that wants you to play cards from throughout Magic? Even your lands matter here. One player has already sent me a deck they built with this, which is very cool to see, and it looks like a blast to try and make work. Finally, there's one more thing I want to call out as pretty cool. These were the first unknown events where I saw a bunch of players do something very unique, get their cards drawn on by artists. A number of people took their playtest cards to artists to draw in the artwork. I love, for example, that Jesper Icing of Colossal Dreadmaw fame was even in Barcelona to sketch in the Colossal Dreadmaw. These were super cool and something I look forward to seeing more of in the future. If you play in one of these events, go get them drawn on by artists. It's just awesome. Well, there you have it, the summer unknown events. What do you think? Which cards do you most want to be real? Let me know and I'll keep it in mind working toward the future. In the meantime, I'll talk with you again soon. and hopefully see you at MagicCon Vegas for a bit more unknown in September. Until then, have fun thinking about some weird magic cards. You got this. Let's take a look at the 10th Doctor. There's a lot to take in here, so let's go little by little. It's 5 mana for a 3/5 Time Lord Doctor, which, yes, both new creature types. Time Lord, by the way, is all one type, Magic's first ever 2-word type. The first ability rewards you when you Alonzi into the fray, attacking with